Welcome to SimCon, Fred. It's a treat to have you. For those that don't know Fred, and that can't be many of you, Fred was the winner of our pre-posthumous Legend Award last year at SimCon for being the kind of guy that loves to help people and a true inspiration in our industry. He's a key part of the Kamailio project, so we've got a double dose of Kamailio today, which we're very privileged to have. As Daniel introduced, Fred's going to give us a slightly deeper dive on how you can use Kamailio to face Simwood, which I'm sure will be incredibly useful for you. Fred, take it away.
Well, good morning. Today's talk is going to be on using Kamailio as a SIP edge router and Simwood gateway. So for many of the people that use Simwood, you provide some sort of voice service. And so with that, we'll discuss some of the methods that you could use Kamailio to assist your business. So Kama what? So the first aspect is this is Kamailio. It's a Hawaiian word, and it means to communicate. And, it's sometimes easier if you see it spelled out phonetically like that. My name is Fred Posner, and I'm a voice over IP consultant based in the U.S. And there's my beautiful daughter. I'm assuming you guys can see my screen. And she looks better in the hat than I do. And if you need to reach me, please come out to qxork.com, and I'd love to communicate with you. What we're going to go over today is what is a SIP edge router. So we'll discuss what that is. We'll briefly discuss what is Kamailio, because I know that Daniel came before me, and he's very intimidating to follow. And then we'll talk about some examples as to how Kamailio can help you in how you utilize Simwood. And then I've left some decent amount of time for questions. And so with that, what is a SIP edge router? So a SIP edge router provides security. It helps with routing of telephone calls and or traffic. It will handle authentication. It can handle NAT traversal. It can handle bridging between UDP, TLS, and TCP. It can help you with relaying RTP media. It can work with topology hiding, and it can also bridge IPv4 and IPv6 traffic. So how is this different than an SBC? Well, the authoritative answer on that comes from a person associated with the Kamailio project, Alex Balashov, who's a good friend. He's also US based. I'll make these slides available after the presentation, so please don't worry about having to try to write down that little link there. He wrote two very good articles on an SBC and Kamailio. And if anyone knows Alex, the verbosity level on these articles are quite high, and he's very detailed, and he's just a great guy. So the too long didn't read version of it is, we're not a B2B UA, and we're not handling transcoding. Which, that being said, now that RTP engine, which is a media relay, does do transcoding, you can actually do some transcoding utilizing Kamailio to help set that up. But basically, the difference is no transcoding and no B2B UA. But both of those are generally available in your PBX solution, whether that's free switch, asterisk, free PBX, whatever you're using. So what is Kamailio? Kamailio is an open source SIP server. And so it is purely open source on GPL v2. It is able to handle large scale deployments as well as small. So if you can go big, you can also go small. It can integrate with WebRTC. It can integrate with databases, Redis, and node databases. So like Mongo and things like that. And it allows you to communicate over UDP, TCP, TLS, and bridging, among all of those other things. One of the strengths of Kamailio is that it is modular based. So the core of Kamailio can handle your transport, your memory, your configuration, and things like that. And then you can add modules as you need. So if you'd like to connect to, for example, MySQL, you can load that module. If you need to handle NAT, you can load that module. If you want to use an internal memory caching system, you can load that. And if you don't need those, you don't have to load it, which allows Kamailio to remain very lightweight, unlike the Bellycam, but very lightweight and very, very fast. If you think about your PBX and all of the things that it has to do, from listening to media, handling key presses when somebody types in a code on their phone, and transcoding different codecs and everything like that. Kamailio is focused basically on the SIP. And so because of that, it can handle efficiently the SIP traffic at extremely high scale. When we say high scale, thousands of calls setups is nothing for Kamailio. 500 calls per second is not something that you would ever truly worry about. Hundreds of thousands of endpoints is not something that's a problem with Kamailio. So when we talk about the ability to scale your platform, this is the product to help you with it. One example of how Kamailio might be deployed is using. So, for example, you have your carriers, and let's say Simwood's one of these, and you might have your users and things like that. You have the huge cloud internet, and then Kamailio would be right behind there, and then would act as the gateway or the SIP edge router between your SBCs. So visually, this is where it would fit in the picture. It would stand in front of your PBXs. If you don't use Asterisk and you use FreeSwitch, pretty much looks the same thing. Okay, so that's just a quick visualization of. Here it is. It's generally behind your router and your firewall, and then your phone goes behind Kamailio. Some of the best modules that tend to help you when you're deploying with your typical use case that you would have with Simwood would be one of my favorite ones, which is HTable. And Daniel, who talked to you briefly before, has an amazing quote where, if you're not using HTable, you're probably doing something wrong. Excuse me. But since 2010, Kamailio's had an HTable module, which is a hash table, and it allows you to store anything you want pretty much in shared memory. And what this makes is a custom cache system, which we can also replicate to other Kamailios through another module we have called the distributed messaging queue, so DMQ. So what that says is, let's say there's an IP address that I don't like, and it wants to connect to me. Well, I can remember that this IP address is bad, and then I can send that to other Kamailios. And so now I don't have to do a lookup every time. I don't have to do, any kind of TCP connection to a database or anything like that. I can remember it in an internal memory cache, making it extremely fast, extremely efficient, and duplicated among every system that I need it. The other benefits that you could do with this would be call routing, such as, okay, a call comes into a number. I now need to know where it goes. I could use it to remember people's passwords, so I don't have to constantly look up user passwords and usernames. And it just is a phenomenally efficient way of increasing your performance. Kamailio also has a mid-registrar capabilities, and this is through our UAC module. And what this does is it allows you to receive registrations from the open internet, and then pass those on to your PBX, so that when you have attacks or you have flooding, you can have Kamailio act as the in-between. You can let your PBX be more efficient by, let's say, only handling registrations once an hour, and having Kamailio do the every 30-second registration because of NAT, things like that. So the mid-registrar capabilities, which we've had again since 2010, is a really good way of helping to make your PBX deployment more efficient. And again, we have some of the documentation on that right on the Kamailio website. It's really like a wizard. And Kamailio has a tremendous amount of different capabilities for you. So most of the aspects that I'm seeing now deal with API routing. So most people want to do a call out to, just a simple API that you might have written in whatever you would like, and then receive the information as to where I should send a call or how I should handle the call. And Kamailio can handle that directly. In fact, there's special modules in there where if you return the information in your API in a certain way, it can just work. We support Kemi, which is an embedded language interface. So Dan Jenkins did a presentation a few years back on that your next phone developer is going to be a web developer, and you just saw that with Dave's presentation, how there's many things that you can do with languages and things like that. Kamailio supports many different languages, Python, Lua, JavaScript, Squirrel, and you can write your configurations for Kamailio within those language bases, so you don't have to learn the Kamailio scripting interface, which is pretty I don't have a problem with it, but web devs already know their languages and it can work out better for that. We have very strong support with Redis, including modules and backend, so that you could have multiple layers of caching. Redis is, of course, very popular and a good interface for other people to work at. So if you could share your information with Redis, we can connect to there and get whatever information is needed. The distributed message queue, the DMQ that I talked about before, allows us to run multiple instances of Kamailio. So if you have multiple data centers, we can have Kamailio share information by distributing whatever changes or knowledge base is known. We can have Kamailio share that information, and it's almost instantaneous. And then the dispatching module is one of the oldest within Kamailio, and it is allows us to handle failover, load balancing, and as well as determining where calls should go and what happens on a fail route. So it's a fantastic module. Now, when you put all of these modules, and there's over 100 modules, so this is just tip of the iceberg here. I'm trying to not go too far into the woods and keep it kind of fun, if you could describe it that way, just so that you could visualize maybe how this software can help you in your typical role. So if we look at some of the examples that we might have, your typical scenario is you have a PBX connected to Simwood. So if we said, well, how can Kamailio help me out here? The first thing that it could do is that SIP edge router. If you remember back to that slide, the first handling was security. So what Kamailio can do is it can inspect some of the SIP elements coming into your server. So whether it's SQL injection, and there's a lot of SQL injection coming out there via SIP, or flooding attacks. If you've been on the internet, you know that your PBX is being attacked by unwanted people. So Kamailio can inspect some of these SIP packets, or all the SIP packets, and then make sure that the information that gets to your PBX is the one that it should receive, and block out all the others. It can help minimize the detection of your PBX as even a PBX by ignoring traffic that it should not respond to. It can just kind of move on. So this is one of the the simplest ways. So even if you only have one PBX, you could benefit from some of the security aspects that Kamailio can provide, as well as the immediate availability to offer, for example, TLS. So since Kamailio can do TLS to UDP bridging, if you are just connected to Simwood via UDP and you want to offer TLS connections to your endpoints, you could have Kamailio act as the TLS to UDP bridge, and keep your PBX the same, not worry about making many changes on your PBX, and just having Kamailio act as that bridge, and as well as TCP and things like that. So that would be a good use carry scenario for just a single PBX. Excuse me. As your use case grows, you might start having multiple PBXs. And so in this case, whether it's, hey, I have a client that's really big and I want to put them on their own dedicated PBX, or I need some sort of failover, so I'm having multiple PBXs, or I'm split, for example, function. So I have maybe one PBX handling voicemail and another one handling queues. Kamailio can sit in between the internet and the PBXs, and when Simwood traffic comes to you, it can determine which PBX it should go to, as well as if one PBX is down, it could then go to the other. And so you have a failover there. It can also do that load balancing. So when you have the client that's really successful, which should hopefully translate to you being happy, you can provide some sort of load balancing and make sure that that client remains happy, you remain happy, Simwood's happy, everybody's just really happy, and Kamailio's to thank, and we take checks. But just using this as a dispatch load balancer is something that can really help you with scalability as it start going into there, as well as providing, if you look, you have multiple PBXs behind one Kamailio. So any of that security aspects is now protecting all of your PBXs at once. So, a bad attacker, I have one gateway where they'll fail, and my PBX is protected. And then you can start getting into high availability, and whether that's having Kamailio in different data centers, or having multiple Kamailios in the same data center, but in a highly active method, whether it's active or active standby, and then dealing with PBXs there. Like we said, with the DMQ, we can share information, so anything that one Kamailio knows, the other one can immediately know. And again, this allows for true scalability and distributed security as well. And so the beauty part on this one is if there's a new DID or something that needs to be added, just think about this. Let's say you have 6 or 7 PBXs and you need to make a change on something with Simwood, or you're adding a DID. And at this point, I only need to add it in my Kamailio, because Kamailio is my interface to Simwood. So all of my PBXs just connect to Kamailio, and Kamailio can send it all to Simwood. So I have one interface for my carrier, and that allows better security in that aspect. And Simwood already provides some pretty amazing fraud security, and then you're only helping that by having a limited footprint that will hit your carrier. Some of these benefits that you'll immediately get, like I said, were the anti-flood. So if you're attacked by many, rogue agents just attacking you, the beauty of the cloud is that people hop on things like DigitalOcean or Amazon, and they can just use the power of these systems and just take us down quickly. Well, with Kamailio, it will automatically start detecting when you have too high of a threshold of packets against you and start blocking them. So it's an anti-flood system called Pike, and it just automatically blocks it. We can look for SQL injection and block that. You can block traffic based on user agent. You can also come into your own kind of criteria. So for example, on your clients, if you're saying, okay, well, this client is my lowest tier and they can only do 1 call per second or 1 call per minute, or however you want to do that. You can use those kind of counting in Kamailio and go, okay, well, I'm going to block this client from making too many calls because it already has exceeded that threshold, which also helps you a lot with eliminating fraud. You can do simultaneous call limiting as well. So this client's only allowed, let's say, 10 simultaneous calls. You can do that kind of aspect. And again, since it has that DMQ module, we can use your totality of all Kamailios, and they can use that same data pool. So even though I'm 3 calls on one box, 7 on another, I know that that's 10. You can use centralized call detail records. You can have a highly available registrar and with media proxy for SIP. And there's a lot more that you can do. Again, this is a tip of the iceberg. There's a bonus that we launched with a company I'm associated with called API Ban. And if you went to apiban.org, and Dave talked about it quickly in his last presentation, but you can get a free API key. What this is API Ban is a bunch of honeypots that we have throughout the world that is just listening for people attacking PBXs and making note of their IP addresses and making those IP addresses available to you so that you can automatically block traffic before it hits you. So there's an open source Go client, which automatically works with Asterisk, FreeSwitch, FreePBX, NetSapiens, anything that's Linux based. You can just throw the Go client on there and go ahead and, every however long you want to cron it. So every minute, every 4 minutes, it's automatically blocking these IP addresses via IP tables for you. And again, it's free like beer. Because of the Kamailio Association, it also integrates directly with Kamailio without having to use a client. There's a Draccio plugin that Dave announced the other day as well. And again, this is free. It's just meant to hopefully keep us all more secure and prevent some fraud. And with that, I should have left a good amount of time checking the watch. Yes, I'm happy. I have at least 15 minutes for questions, and this is usually the best part. I apologize for not being there in person. Clearly, based on my voice, that's probably a good thing for everyone. My wife pretty much said that I am not going to visit Simon without her, and so therefore I am stuck in Florida. And so I do not have cookies, but when I promise you that if we were to meet in person, I will have a cookie for anyone that asks a good question. So with that, please, if you have any questions, I'd love to talk.
Thank you, Fred.
Thank you.
Any questions for Fred? Oh, go on, there must be one.
Oh, this is the awkward period.
Yeah. I think who has used Kamailio before? Okay, one table in the middle. Okay, who had heard of Kamailio before today? Okay, who is going to look at Kamailio when they get back? Okay, what do you need to know from Fred to make that process easier?
The best place to learn about Kamailio is the kamailio.org website. You have Daniel there, who's one of the co-founders and main author of the project. You can't get any better source of information than Daniel himself. I'm the fatter, quicker talker of the two, so you're with the better one there. Just leaving you with something, if you went to apiban.org, again, there's no money involved in it. It's free. It's something just to try to help you keep your system secure. You'll start noticing that when you block bad traffic, your systems will perform better.
Yeah.
And
Hi,
you'll
Fred.
have less of a risk of sending stuff to Simwood.
Hi, Fred.
Yes,
It's Dan. I've got a question.
Hey, Dan.
How if anyone wants to ask you a question afterwards, how do they contact you? And B, if they want to ask a question to the Kamailio project and get help, how do they get that help?
Well, first of all, thank you for not having me question list. That's a very nice friend of you. So, if you had a question for me, you can reach out to qxork.com, and that has all my contact information. If you have a question for the project, we try to make ourselves as available as possible. We have an extremely active mail list. The mail list is by far the easiest way to find information. It's also extremely indexable on Google. So if you had a question and you searched for something, chances are you're going to see that mailing list. But if you hop over to kamailio.org, you can sign up for a user mail list, a developer mail list, a business mail list, an announcement mail list, however you would like. We also have an IRC channel. It's not as active as the mail list, but we do have a IRC channel, and there's also a Kamailio Slack channel.
Thank you, Fred. I mean, Kamailio is one of those things we've used here for, well, forever. We used OpenSCR before it was Kamailio, and frankly, I wouldn't have us have any SIP service publicly exposed without it in front of it. Principally for the security and scalability benefits that Fred mentioned. But my take on it, it's a bit like somebody gives you a bag of nuts. You can build absolutely anything with them, from a car to a bridge, but it's a bag of nuts. So unless you know where you're going and what you want to achieve, you don't know where to go. So Fred's given us some really good examples there of how you guys could use this in your own infrastructure to improve things. So I hope that's useful for you. Daniel has left. He's gone back to the airport. But Charles is also a very active member of the project. Fred referred to DMQ several times there as well, which Charles maintains. So any questions we can help, and we're happy to do so. But do we have your contact details there again, Fred, just in case anybody needs to give you money to help with some of this stuff?
Sure. And, even without money, we're here to help. It's an open source project. And so, everyone that's in attendance gets a free Kamailio license. If you go to qxork.com, that's my personal contact information. And it doesn't spell anything. If anybody's old telecom, those are all letters that you don't have to say Q as in Quebec. It's qxork.com is for me, and then kamailio.org is the Kamailio project.
Fabulous. Thank you, Fred. Well, thanks again for joining us, and can we give Fred a big round of applause?
Thank you all very much.
And please send our love to the family. See you soon.
You got it. Take care.
Thanks, Fred.